We'll never know, will we, without the ADA, if a number of following events happen, but I will talk about one of the most special ones in my career right here in the federal courthouse. And this goes back a couple of years where a jury was being picked in a very complicated case. To the credit of the lawyers, perhaps they wouldn't have excused. I had a totally blind juror in the jury pool. So, and as many people know, lawyers can excuse so many. The fancy word is peremptory. They don't have to have a reason. So I called the lawyers up to my bench before they exercised their peremptories, and maybe to the credit of the lawyers, they wouldn't have anyway, but I said, "Counsel, I assume you will not be excusing that totally blind juror." Well, they didn't. So, at least for the first time in our building, we had a totally blind juror on the panel, and then all I said to the lawyers before they started introducing exhibits during the trial was, since we don't have everything in Braille, we probably shouldn't have some other issues. I just tell your experts and witnesses as they take the stand, as they put something up on the screen, just to explain it and not just to make assumptions. And I, of course, didn't say that in front of the jury, and so went through a quite a complicated trial. And now the trial's over. There was a very fair and proper verdict reached. And then, as most lawyers are aware, for many years, both state and federal judges call the jury back to your chambers, and there's nobody else back there but you and the jury. And sometimes they have questions, and sometimes they don't. And then we'll thank them for their service and give them certificates and then encourage them to make an anonymous evaluation of their experience. Well, I wasn't sure why, but the jury foreperson and two other jurors and wanted to hang back and wait for the other 9 people to leave, one of whom was leaving was the totally blind young woman. And so here's what happened. The foreperson said to me back here in my chambers, "Judge Frank, we can't believe that you allowed, and the rules allow, a woman, when she was selected to be on the panel, we couldn't believe that the rules or the Constitution allowed a totally blind person to sit on the jury. Judge Frank, we were so wrong. Judge, she saw," these are direct quotes now, "Judge, she saw things we did not see. Judge, we were a better jury with her than without her. And Judge, we had no idea we were been carrying around all these years, these unfair stereotypes of people with disabilities, especially a blind person. And it's got us all thinking about these issues." Well, if that doesn't tell the story of the ADA and the meaning of living together, inclusion, being with one another, working together, laughing together, playing together, crying together, that if that doesn't talk about the human condition, I mean, I still, as if it happened yesterday, as those 3 jurors were here, if you could have seen the expressions they had, and that wouldn't have happened. And without that, in fact, frankly speaking, there are still some issues around the country, and actually a lot of people are about, well, how can a blind person or a totally deaf person serve on juries or other people? Well, if you went and looked at our local rules and the law upholds this nationally, we have an obligation to provide interpreters, people, anybody proficient in sign language, and so then we always, that's part of our education to new judges, both state and federal, and to lawyers too. Just remember, when you're talking about diversity of jury panels, let's just remember that we're talking about we're talking about individual disabilities as well. That's why oftentimes when I talk about that, when we're giving an orientation to juries, and it's all because of uh, the ADA and other laws that have been passed, rulings made, and people with disabilities speaking out, because much like the civil rights movement, it was people, the victims of the discrimination or the stereotyping, just like much like the civil rights movement, it's individual disabilities and their friends and family who have shown us the way and not remain silent. But so when we give, and I can say what I do when I talk about, we will make reasonable accommodations as we look at the jury pool. I said, and just so you know, folks, I bring this up not to look for an excuse to, a reason to excuse you, but to urge you to serve regardless of any disability you have, and we will accommodate it. And so, for example, and we will not excuse anyone unless it's a medical hardship and we get confirmation. If people call in and say, well, are you aware that I'm blind? Or are you aware that I have this significant hearing situation? Or I'm in a wheelchair? Or I'm this? Or I'm that? Or I had someone serve on a panel, again, I attribute it to the ADA, and actually I attribute it to people with disabilities educating and sensitizing me, the system, in our profession, with Tourette's syndrome. I had a juror serve that too. And like, I want to be fair, in these cases, I'm not so sure that because of who the lawyers were, I'm not suggesting that without my suggestion to them, they would have excused, because I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt too, because I think there's a level of education and training and CLEs and other issues where now people are more sensitized because of the Karens of the world and other people like her friends and other people too that speak out, friends, family. And so I think there's an education there and a sensitivity there that did not exist some years ago, because you'd probably have to look long and wide, maybe even today, to see when there were people with some of these issues that served on a jury, quite apart from when the foreperson and the two other jurors wanted to stay back and talk to me.